But I think the most untapped potential is in the mid-market space where, maybe one of the kind of players who worked at, one of these mega enterprises that has tremendous success goes to work at, a smaller company, as I mentioned before, and they're bringing that motion, that playbook to drive marketplace for them. I think that's very interesting.
We believe this time is like no other. We refer to these as the tectonic shifts.
All the hyperscalers in the world, if you add them all together, managed services will be 1.5 times larger.
Because it is the customer buying behavior that has created the need for all of us to rethink our models.
Until we have data quality, the effectiveness of AI cannot be realized, and effectiveness of the partnerships cannot be realized.
Can you figure out first what your purpose is and how Microsoft can support your purpose and how you can support Microsoft's purpose? Now we have a partnership. It's the ultimate partnership.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Guide to Partnering. I'm Vince Menzione, your host, and my mission is to help leaders like you achieve your greatest results through successful partnering. Today, I'm excited to be joined in the studio by a leader who's leading some of the change we're seeing in this world of marketplaces and hyperscaler co-selling. Jon Yoo is the CEO and co-founder of Suger, an innovative company that's helping leading some of this incredible change and growth. And I'm excited to have him here in the studio. Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Vince. And by the way, what a great event last night.
Thank you.
The whole day was amazing.
So for those of you who haven't watched or listened, we have the Ultimate Partner Winter Retreat is on our YouTube channel as well as this. So I encourage you to go there and watch. What an incredible session. So many great leaders in the room, including yourself. Well, I feel privileged to get to know you a little bit better these last couple of years. We met, I think it's almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
And you were just kind of at the early stage of starting up Suger, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like two guys in a garage kind of thing, but it was really, you were very at the early stage. And I really want to spend some time learning about you, your company, your journey, and where you hope to take this market. So I thought we'd start there. Like, what was the inspiration behind Suger? And talk to us about that journey to this role as the co-founder and CEO of Suger.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess if I rewind it back all the way, I've wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was 16. So my first job, I don't know if I told you this, but first company was around like LED technology of can you print these like display chips, so to speak, on a pliable surface. Turns out no one actually wants a freaking phone screen on your like ski jacket. So that's always like, they say a founder's like first, product is, based on technology, and then you work your way backwards to the problem. Yeah. And in this scenario, we really started with the problem. And part of that came from my time at Salesforce, where we saw just how complex these systems can be and workflows can be when you start to expand to multiple channels. But it's really my co-founder and CTO, Jon Yoo, who had the idea and really felt the pain deeply. So, he was at Facebook for a bit, worked on AI at Google for a little bit, and then he ended up at Confluent, where he was the tech lead of their marketplace product, and they were doing 40-50% of their revenue through these hyperscaler marketplaces. And I mean, they were feeling the pain. They had roughly 10 engineers and, tens of ops people, whether in the US or offshore, that was actually helping to manage this channel. And so he really felt the pain point deeply and thought, hey, not everyone has the payroll, to go hire 10 engineers and multiple ops people to manage this. So why not?
Very complex.
It's super complex. Yeah.
And for those of our listeners and viewers who don't understand, tell us a little bit more about what Suger's mission is and what your organization does.
Yeah, I mean, super high level. It might sound a little, cliche, but we really want to bring a consumer experience to B2B sales. And we see that these hyperscaler marketplaces is really the best wedge for us to, kind of see this, marketplace-like activities where, I always wondered, why can I go on Amazon.com and pick up, cameras here or bed sheets and be able to compare different products as any consumer does, and like the one-click purchase now, and you can have it delivered to your door. We really want to bring that experience into, if you want to deploy a database, for example, how can you actually do that with one click of a button, where all the procurement, the deployment is handled through these marketplaces. And so amazing benefits. We want to bring it and democratize it to like every single B2B software company in the world.
Very cool. we talk about at Ultimate Partner, we talk about the tectonic shifts, incredible change and transformation going on in our world, right? Our lives are shifting weekly, it seems. Yeah. Right. We talked about DeepSeek moment that is already past us, and Stargate and all the investments that are going on, just the way the world is rapidly changing. But we also talk about marketplace moment quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And the role of the hyperscalers. And I still feel that a lot of organizations come at this thing called partnership at it from the wrong angle. And they miss the fact that I say 3 sets of rails, and maybe it's more than 3 sets of rails, but the hyperscalers really, with the level of investment, the $100 billion type investments annually that they're making each in this world, and then driving it around marketplaces, that this is a moment that I feel that not enough people are embracing the right way. Would you agree?
I would think so. It's not like for example, with AI, there's a ChatGPT moment where everyone just saw the value. I mean, it took you 15 minutes to start playing with it to realize what the possibilities are, and the tectonic shift was immediate. I think marketplace shift or like adoption has been a lot more gradual. I mean, of course, this like exploded over the past couple of years, but these hyperscaler marketplaces have been around for 10, 12 years. But it's really only in the past 4 or 5 years where you start to see, the marketplace moments where you have companies like Confluent. There's been earnings reports of like CrowdStrike doing so much. I mean, Snowflake, one of our customers, was the first to cross $1 billion in AWS marketplace revenue alone. And so I think we're starting to get to the early majority. I've seen it personally over the past 2-3 years where, in the past it used to be like the top like 100 companies are doing majority of the marketplace transactions. And we're actually seeing a ton of early stage startups, growth stage startups that are actually starting to really adopt marketplace and, drive all their upsells and renewals through it for all these benefits, not just like commit drawdowns, but actually leveraging, the speed of delivery or the fact that you can have flexible billing and you don't have to worry about, debt collections if someone goes out of business or something, or they don't want to pay. And so it's been super exciting to see that gradual evolution, and hopefully we can play a huge part in accelerating that adoption.
I'm glad. I want to tease out what you just said here too, because I wanted to emphasize this. We had this moment where 5 companies crossed $1 billion aggregate in transactions, right? And it looked like we were on a greater path. But when you peeled back on some of those, it was really the fulfillment, right? They were private offers. These were big contracts, and they were just taking it through fulfillment, through marketplace to burn down on the commitments.
Yeah.
But it wasn't this organic thing. Yep. And what you're discussing now is this, like, how do you organically get at it?
Yep.
How does a company that maybe is just got to product market fit, and they're taking their product to market, and it's a great product, and how do they utilize the marketplace to drive awareness, to drive buying behavior, and to have those customers burn down against it? And I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, talk about like the moment of marketplace. I actually think that you can kind of break it up into a couple pieces. I mean, private offers coming in really led to major adoption.
Absolutely.
I think you're starting to see the hyperscalers really think about the PLG motion. How do you actually, drive like trials and POCs and discoverability really through these marketplaces? And, if I pick, a new functionality, for example, AWS came out with like the buy with AWS functionality where, you can actually embed like the little button into your exact website where you've already constructed the website to capture all the foot traffic. And so it's kind of taking the power of marketplace, what's the right word, like everywhere?
Yeah, extending it.
Exactly.
Extending it. Yeah.
Instead of actually just curating this storefront where you have to drive foot traffic to. And so we get very excited about that. So I instead of saying like age of marketplace, I'd actually say like age of marketplace PLG, because that's the future that I get super excited about, not just, drawdown on cloud commitments.
Yeah. So you just had a seminal moment, I would say. Congratulations. You've raised $15 million Series A. How do you plan to utilize the funds, and how are you thinking about your growth?
Carefully, so that we don't run, they always say the CEO's job is to make sure you don't run out of money.
That's right.
We're certainly not just like going out and, buying.
You didn't get a Lamborghini?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We put it all in Bitcoin. No.
That might have been a good thing a few months ago.
Yeah. That's a whole nother story. Yes. I might need a cocktail for that. But we really think about it as investing in R&D.
Yeah.
I think we have semblance of product market fit, but that's constantly evolving, right? Competitors catch up, the cloud providers aren't stopping anytime soon around, making their own kind of native experience better. And so we're going to try to hire a ton of engineers, and we are already doing so, to invest not just in our core product offering around marketplace and co-sell, but invest in a lot of AI use cases that we've been thinking about for the past 2 years. We just haven't been able to, there's all these table stake functionalities that we need to like set the foundation for. And then there's so many other things around the buyer side of marketplace, because, you talk about, okay, how do we, I think we can shape seller behavior, but sellers want to meet the buyers where their budget is and where the ease of transaction is. And I think there's some level of market disequilibrium where it's a lot easier for sellers now that Sugar's around and some of our competitors, but the buyer side is still very ignored, so to speak. When we talk to our customers who are trying to sell into a mega enterprise, they always talk about, man, it's really difficult to find, who the right budget owner is, or who the right person who can actually accept the private offer. They struggle with figuring out, let's say you're a Walmart and you have $10 billion committed across the 3 cloud providers.
Right.
How do you know which cloud to procure through? If they have 10 different business units, do they have specific, budget for, third-party purchases through these cloud commitments? What's the approval workflow? Because that also sits outside of, kind of their direct approval.
Because you have to go through the procurement process. It might be especially in a Walmart.
Exactly.
A whole different building than the campus.
Exactly. And so we really want to bridge the gap. And, ultimately, once we are able to fulfill both sellers and buyers, we're able to provide a lot more data and insights, that kind of fulfills the vision of what we're looking for, of how do we recommend, what type of products to purchase, or bundled offerings, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, when you described to me too, this is why co-selling is so important, right? Because they become your Sherpas in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are a buyer, you are working with a cloud provider.
Absolutely.
So you're relying on your account executives. Their account executives are then relying on the partner team in their own organization, that are then crossing over to the partner and trying to navigate this journey, which can be very complex. And what you're saying is you're going to streamline some of that process.
Absolutely. We're not, similar to like this whole provocative death of SaaS, we're not saying death of co-sell. With this, we're really talking about how do we evolve what co-sell looks like, beyond just, hey, let me just go share 1,000 ops and hope the spray and pray approach that, a lot of people talked about yesterday. How do we actually make it a lot more intelligent, based on some of these buying behaviors and account mapping and whatnot?
Yeah. So provocative question, you're at the first to market, right?
Yeah.
Some people call them enablers or marketplace platforms.
Yeah.
You came at the problem after a couple other solutions were out there.
Mm-hmm.
How did you think about the problem differently? Yeah. And how do you uniquely solve for it today?
I mean, first and foremost, we have tremendous respect for our competitors, and competition's good. It deflates prices and it makes us better, it makes us move faster. And I certainly try to use that to motivate the team around hey, if we're not moving 10x the speed of some of our competitors who have a lot more funding, we're screwed. But I think we have a lot of second mover advantage, because we got started after a lot of these APIs were available, and based on Chengju's experience from Confluent, he knows where a lot of the skeletons are buried. And so we were able to re-architect it from the ground up to be very API first. So what I mean by that is, I think about it as, hey, let's unify all the channels. Mm-hmm. So an offer is an offer, regardless of whether it's through AWS or direct or GCP, et cetera. And what that allows you to do is you can build a workflow on top of it, where you can trigger a series of actions based on any events from marketplace, regardless of which partner it was. And so,
interesting.
If you kind of talk about, hey, we can do bidirectional lead sync or send offers or, recognize revenue, it's not that hard, and a lot of people can do it, and that still requires a ton of manual effort by different teams. Mm-hmm. Think about in the life cycle of a transaction, there's opportunity management. So there's co-sell, product that really helps with that. The entire quote to cash process of how do you actually, have an AE that, co-sells, but is part of a co-selling motion, but also has to go figure out the account ID, blah, blah, blah. Have a handoff to deal desk or ops or whoever's managing that process to send an offer. And then, once the offer is sent, there's a level of workflows of, reaching out to the end customer, making sure internal teams are aligned. And then once the offer gets accepted, like there's a bunch of system things that needs to happen, whether it's updating a field in Salesforce, sending the metadata to, your ERP solutions like we or NetSuite a lot, so that they're not double invoicing the end customer. And so all this work, all these workflows are things that people do manually today.
Yeah, I was going to say all manual processes.
Yeah.
The complexity is astounding, actually. You describe it.
Totally. I mean, there's whole like products and companies built around these processes, and none of them extend into marketplace. And so how do we actually, just sending an offer, for example, is really the beginning part of a very long, complex process. And so based on that offer, how do we trigger everything so that people don't actually have to do manual work and they can just focus on selling and not having these like siloed operations team having to, send 100 private offers, on the last day of the month or quarter and freaking out because, we're having to like enable all of them to even understand what a private offer is and things like that. I think that's the key to removing the adoption and, removing the barriers to adoption of marketplace.
Yeah. And then I think I heard you say like you streamlined it and it's sort of like one set of tools and then the APIs and signals all come into the one set of tools versus maybe building out on AWS, then building out on Google, then building out on Microsoft Azure.
Yeah, totally. It's, we always talk about like unified experience because the experience that I had with Salesforce was just every new channel has different APIs or requirements or policies or oftentimes different teams working them.
Yep.
And then there's usually a team that sits horizontally across these channels, whether it's IT or ops, that are just like pissed off, to be frank, and the salespeople don't care. They just want to close the deal.
Absolutely.
And so, while we actually serve sales and partnership people like frontline, facing, customer facing, partner facing folks, the real power users we found of our product are kind of the unsung heroes, so to speak, like deal desk and RevOps.
Yeah. And those are the people that have to deal with the complexity all day long.
Exactly.
Those are the tough jobs.
Yeah.
So a lot of talk about AI and how AI is going to help us, and then also these microtransactions and AI, agentic AI. What trends do you see or foresee in the future as this world evolves around marketplaces?
Yeah, I mean, couple things. One is I start with there's a lot more self-hosted deployments that we're seeing. So, you think about pure SaaS where it's all running in your cloud and then like hybrid SaaS or, whatever else. But we're definitely seeing a lot more where, the control plane might be running on X cloud, but then they have agents running in the customer's VPC. And because people are very guarded with their data, we talked a lot about data security and governance yesterday. And so that's certainly a big piece that we're seeing around marketplace. Like, AWS, for example, there's a lot more AMIs and containers that we're, getting asked to help with for our customers. It's a lot more complex, to be frank with you, than SaaS, but we're also the only player in the market that's doing it today. The second part that I'd see is more and more companies earlier on, like a lot of these startups. I mean, we came out at Y Combinator and we see AI agents is like 60% of every cohort, if not more. And they're actually having a seminal moment around being able to break into enterprises. So maybe 5-10 years ago, not very common that these, early stage startups could sell into enterprises. Now you have things like companies going from like 1 to 12, 1 to 50 million ARR, selling these. We'll see how sustainable that is.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
that's pretty wild growth.
Yeah, but they're leveraging marketplace earlier and earlier in their journey versus a couple of years ago where they might wait until they get to a certain level of maturity to actually leverage marketplace. So I think it's very, very, it's just awesome that people are deciding, hey, we're going to be marketplace forward from the get-go. And there's actually, as adoption of this channel grows and people move jobs here and there, we're seeing a lot more of, let's say, some grizzled veteran who have seen what marketplace at scale looks like. They go work at a smaller company and immediately their first thing is, I want to turn on marketplace because I had such great success. And so this cross-pollination across different companies and different segment lines is, I think, a really good thing overall for the industry.
Yeah, it's good for the growth of all.
Yeah.
And I still come back to the $420 billion in durable cloud budgets. And we're so underutilized.
That helps.
Right now. It's a huge number. The TAM is incredible. So you talked about some customers. I'm kind of interested from a partner or customer, because a partner, we talk about the word partner, and partners are actually customers of yours.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Snowflake. I'm just kind of interested on Snowflake because their evolution, they're a huge player. They're a platform company. Like, what did you see from them, and what have you seen from the best of the best that you've worked with?
Yeah, they certainly invested a lot into the tooling. So they had teams like aligned to, I mean, when you get into enterprise, it's not just Snowflake, but almost every company that we see verticalized around different clouds. So you have an AWS Alliance team, Azure Alliance team, GCP Alliance team, and then
Separate teams.
Yeah, but then there's a partner ops team that usually sits horizontally across all hyperscalers. But even then, they might have like kind of a business partner relationship. And what I saw Snowflake do is they invest a lot in automation. So they built a lot of the tooling in-house before we came in, and just seeing the level of sophistication of like custom objects that they created, flows that they created, is you kind of need that at that scale.
Yeah.
And so when we talk to some companies who want to learn, because they always come in and saying, hey, I want to learn what XYZ is doing that's working out so well.
Right.
I think one advice that I give all the time is just have the right tooling that best fits where you are in the maturity curve of marketplace. So, I'll give you an example. Some people, are very mature and they come in and they don't have any automation set up, and they have like 30 ops people literally going into the respective cloud portals, which I'm just going to say it sucks.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. No offense. And
No, but it's,
and they have to have these business partner like kind of subject matter experts, because if you're very familiar in AWS console, but you're not very familiar in Azure and GCP, does that mean that they should have to learn like 3 different consoles and update everything in their own internal system as well? So there's a tremendous stress that it puts on those teams to scale. But then there's also the flip side where certain companies come in and, they see the power of our workflow builder and they're like, we want to automate this. And I have to kind of, say, hold your horses. Let's get a couple transactions first. We can do it manually, and then we can start to automate away each pieces. Because the way that I think about kind of, not necessarily the world, but product is, it's a supply chain. It's like, I think about it as a flow chart of, hey, let's chart out exactly what the flow is, and then one by one, we'll automate that away depending on, the level of impact or how much frictionless this process can get. Yep. And some people just want to come in and do the whole thing. And it's like, it is not worth my time, your time, anyone's time until we get the initial traction going.
Well, we get in a whole conversation about process and process engineering. And the fact of the matter is, if you start inventing the process before you've actually taken through and shaken it out, you're really not, you're going to have to go do it again anyway.
Yeah. It's, a lot of people in this industry talk about playbooks. Yeah. What's the right co-sell playbook or marketplace operate? Like, what does good look like, effectively? Right. And that's where, right now it does require some discovery for us to really tease out what is your flow today and what's the ideal state. Yeah. I think as we evolve our workflow offering, we'll be able to provide basically like a library or template of plays and like plays that they can pick and choose, or they can, describe in natural language what they expect the flow to look like. And all these nodes can snap into place, or, they can just pick out of, a list of automation that they want that's most common that we see as good looks like. And that hopefully should make not just our own cost of service go down, but also provide a lot quicker time to market around these value offerings that we provide.
So you came in as the CEO and co-founder, right? You had a co-founder who understood the problem. What did you do from a startup perspective? Like, how did you think about it as the CEO coming in? Like, what layer did you bring of observability and change into the process? And then what has the outcome been different maybe than where it was from the beginning?
Yeah. I think the first interesting learning was, hey, listing is valuable, because like with any startup or with any company just starting, you usually start in the SMB space and then you move up market.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a goal from the get-go, because when we actually started working with a lot of these earlier stage startups, they want to use us for listing, but then we realized like we're not getting the best feedback because they use our tool like once a month if they need to do a transaction, and they give me a call.
High, right? It's like a few a year.
Yeah, exactly. And so then we went over to kind of the mid-stage, late-stage startups, and, volume starts to tick up and they start to use our product more. But it's really when we started to work with like Fivetran, for example, that was doing not just a ton of, marketplace private offers, but a ton of public offers, which we always shared a vision around like, hey, this PLG motion, but also like billing and metering, because they, bill on a consumption-based model, and, they had like a 10-tab Google Sheets to like massage the usage events to actually convert to the right billable metric or billable output. And so I'd say that's one, kind of the decision to move up market. The second piece was coming from Salesforce. One of my projects briefly was to kind of be the internal PM, or like a PM for the internal business tools, like North America, like sales tooling initiative or whatever. And I realized that people just do not want to ever leave like Salesforce, or, if you use HubSpot. Those are not just a system of record, but it's also where people like have all the reporting, really operate their entire business out of. And so the first like immediate action that we took outside of co-sell, which is what we learned from our space, like everyone that does marketplace also co-sells, is we have to have the best native app experience, so that people can work the way that they like, where they work. And so we immediately came out with the Salesforce app, and we've just been iterating on that since. Nice. The last
direct interaction or
exactly. Yeah. And the last, kind of piece that we learned was we thought that having just these being API first, like these unified APIs would be really helpful for a company like Confluent that has all these engineers who want to leverage these APIs. Right. Turns out no one actually wants to use our APIs. They just want us to do the work for them, which is why it was painful, but, for about 6 months, I actually worked on building the workflow, refactoring entire backend so that I can actually support this. That was painful, but, frankly, we kind of called it initially the improvisation tool, because when we started working with these larger volume, players, they would just come to us with XYZ features, and Change and I are just like, holy shit, like if we just keep building these features for these customers that all vary depending on their Salesforce setup or workflows, we're screwed. Like it's going to be a Frankenstein product. And so let's build something that can abstract all that away and make it customizable to, each respective companies and their very specific workflows.
So I have a pyramid. We don't have a slide here, but I have a pyramid slide. And I talk about the very top of the pyramid being some of the largest software companies in the market. And you can, recognize some of the snowflakes up there, and Google, Cisco, and some of the other the super giants.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of the next layer down, which is sort of like the 750 to 1,000 software companies. And then there's sort of this mid-market. Where do you see the growth? And then there's down below, obviously, the digital natives and some of the startup organizations. But where do you see the growth in that pyramid?
Mid-market.
Mid-market.
Yeah, enterprise is not going anywhere. Right. But, if they're already doing 30 to 50% of their revenue through these hyperscaler marketplaces, it's kind of hard to grow that much more beyond that.
Right.
But I think the most untapped potential is in the mid-market space where, maybe one of the kind of players who worked at, one of these mega enterprises that has tremendous success, goes to work at, a smaller company, as I mentioned before, and they're bringing that motion, that playbook to drive marketplace for them. I think that's very interesting. And then my hope is that as, there's agentic AI and, as companies start to convert to more of like a consumption outcome-based billing model where, cloud marketplaces have historically been very powerful in a lot of these consumption, pricing models, that they're going to adopt it more and more, both in SMB and mid-market. And so very optimistic about that future. But of course, I think our product generally does best with companies with high volumes.
And you mentioned you're putting a lot of the money investment into engineering. How do you think about the go-to-market strategy? What are you doing there to build awareness around Sugar, deliver the right outcomes from a revenue perspective for the company?
We've been super fortunate to have just tremendously talented people join our company, not just on the engineering front, but on the go-to-market side as well. So, they're all in on kind of Sugar and this vision for the future. Nice. And it's funny, like I was saying, like CS is actually the hardest role to enable.
Customer success.
Customer success is so hard to enable because, and we have, in my opinion, the best in the industry, but they have to know so much across the 3 clouds, across all the different modules, not just within our product, but like, different programs that are going on at these respective clouds that are also always changing. But from a go-to-market perspective, it's really about like selling the vision around like workflows. We just help you accelerate revenue because you can access this amazing marketplace with all these benefits, and we help that access be very seamless and embedded into your core workflows that you already have today. But the other piece is like cost efficiencies. So it's not just top line, but bottom line of, do you want to go down this like complex path of a Confluent where they have 10 plus engineers working on this for multiple years, and it's not like a one-time setup and go. And so we're certainly investing a lot more there as well, and not just around awareness of like Sugar, but awareness of our space. Because I think, we really want to become a thought leader like, some of the incumbent players out there who have been paving the way for us in many aspects. And we can't just make it all sugar. It has to be about, the cloud partnerships and marketplace.
So where do you see this going? Like the journey has been amazing. The next few years, is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Like what are the outcomes you hope to achieve? What's the vision?
Well, this is getting recorded, so we want to IPO, and do this for 10 plus years.
Okay. Very cool. You heard it here.
Yeah. It's not about
calendars.
We're not trying to, be like a cash flow positive. Of course, we want to be cash flow positive and profitable, but we're really reinvesting all of our growth back into the product.
Very cool.
Because we don't want to just stop at marketplace and co-sell. We want to make it like interoperable across every channel. So that could be direct channel as well. And what is unique about us is twofold. Like one is we're not just about us, but the space. One is we have the chance to work across every persona that touches, a stage in the life cycle of a transaction. And so whether that's at the opportunity stage with sales and partnership people, throughout the whole quote to cash process, deal desk and RevOps, and then finance gets very involved around RevRec. And so there's going to be different parts where we can go horizontal across all channels, not just marketplace and co-sell, which we get very excited about. But as I mentioned, the buyer side is the part that is super exciting to me because it's untapped. There's no one really playing that space. I'm sure competitors will rise, but that's honestly good for the entire industry. So we welcome that. But the ultimate vision that I see that I get very excited about is that consumer experience to B2B sales. And if you talk to any CIO of a company, they don't buy the ROI analysis that sellers are putting in front of them. Or if they do buy it, it's kind of murky, And I'm a data nerd. So how do you actually bring a very data-oriented approach, a very programmatic approach to procuring software? Well, if similar to how I can buy or be able to compare different products and all the feature specs, et cetera, where I can do a free trial and get 6 different sheets, test it out, and then return it with a 30-day policy. I would love to be able to do that for B2B where, the business owner, their unit owner, is able to outline a PRD or the requirements that they want, set a budget for a POC across X, Y, and we're able to provide the insights around, hey, these are the couple products that, people have purchased that fit these requirements, and they can actually set a budget, against those, and that's part of the things that we'll uncover with the buyer side.
Very cool.
And once they actually trial it using our metering engine, they can actually define the outcome that they want to see and meter against that outcome to determine what is the product they should choose the best. And then we can send all this data around the outcome to price, ratio to the CIO, CFO, CEO, so that they can make the best decision. And that's super cool, in my opinion, but we'll see if we can get there. And I think it's really about sequencing the product lines versus trying to do it all at once.
How do you layer in the partner ecosystem into this conversation? Because I also, as you were describing this to me, I was thinking about the different partners along the journey that are part of the, Jay likes to talk about the 28 moments buying motion. And, you have partners on the front end, maybe doing consulting work. Mm-hmm. You have other organizations that are coming in as trusted. Maybe it's an SI, maybe it's some other partners. And then there's the solution, which in effect isn't usually just one solution.
Totally.
A lot of times it's I've got security, I've got data, I've got Kubernetes, other things I'm layering like Kubernetes and other things that I'm providing here, and maybe 2 or 3 third-party ISV solutions. and then I'm stitching it all together. Maybe I have an MSP on the back end. How do you think about that layering into that discussion you just described?
Yeah, partnerships are not going anywhere, and they are going to be the tip of the spear in driving this. So just because we provide any recommendation doesn't mean that that's it. You have to actually drive that outcome with the hyperscalers, for example, or one of the big things that we see kind of trend in this industry is like bundled offerings.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
All the different cloud providers are realizing, okay, how do we factor in services, or how do we have two different ISVs go to market together, in this motion with these bundled offerings? And so partners are always going to be kind of at the intersection across. I think someone yesterday mentioned like partnerships, the intersection of like tech and relationship or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. Yeah. And if you see that this bundled offering of X and Y are going really well together, you'd expect the partners to be at the forefront of actually driving a joint go-to-market together. Yeah. And of course with the cloud providers as well.
Yeah. It's exciting times we live in.
Yeah, totally. It's hard to see what the future will look like completely. I think every week to week, as we were talking about before, it changes, but it's super exciting.
So for our viewers and listeners today that want to learn more about working with you, partnering with you, or maybe deploying Suger as a solution for their company, how do they do so?
Yeah, reach out to me, Jon@suger.io, Jon without the H, Sugar with an E. It's like Stay Classy San Diego. No. You can go to our website and, just reach out to us. But truly, I am all over my emails. So reach out to me directly if you want to join the growing team, or of course, leverage our product.
And we have some rapid fire questions. I have some other questions I want to ask you today before we break. So what book has most influenced your work?
I do two pieces. One is like Hard Things About Hard Things, I think is the title, by Ben Horowitz. Yeah. That's kind of a very well-known startup book, but it kind of details the story of how everything can go wrong at a startup, and
it does usually.
It does.
The power might go out.
Yeah, yeah. But it's painful, and when I think oftentimes like when you're from the outside looking in, everything seems like it's going smoothly, but internally it like sometimes freaking sucks, and you have to have uncomfortable conversations or handle crises, or everything seems to be breaking. And so how do you actually keep a level head around it all, and not lash out or be manic or all these things, and just realizing like this is part of the journey, and this is not anything new. Like every other company goes through some of these hardships. And also when you see some of the crazy stuff that happens in that book, it really tames what we're going through in some regards. And so I'm like, okay, I always have a saying with the team, the toughest challenge is always ahead of us. So I'm not even worried about this at the moment. The second book is another cliched one a little bit, but Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
Yeah. It's
James Cleary.
I have a tendency to just my eyes are bigger than my stomach in many regards. And I have all these like grandiose plans for myself and how to operate, but, really thinking about how do I create this compounding behavior. And that's also very similar to building a culture at a company. Yeah. If you have a view on this is what greatness looks like and being a well-oiled machine, that doesn't happen overnight. And so how do I set some of the structure and cadence in place so that we can start to build on that culture by, building block by building block? Same thing goes for product development, right? Here's the ideal state, but if you try to do it all at once, you're usually going to come out with a pretty crappy product. Right. And so Changing really believes in iteration, like little by little, and just shipping it, without like too much like hand wringing, and we'll learn pretty quickly, and we're going to iterate and fix any bugs or things like that.
So Jon, what's one habit you can't live without?
Honestly, maybe it's a vice, but coffee. I have to have coffee when I wake up in the morning, where I am just, because during the week I'm averaging like 4 hours of sleep, and I just need. We have Celsius in the office, but I'd say two real habits. One is I try to get some exercise in, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. I haven't been the best about it over the past couple of years, but I found that my mood and my ability to think clearly does fluctuate a lot based on whether I just get my body kind of moving, somewhat active. And so I try to bike to the office, I bike back, and so that's 45 minutes to an hour.
Just getting your exercise in.
Somewhat. Yeah, trying to.
What about the sleep? Let's talk about the 4 hours. Do you feel like that's enough? Or?
No, but I try to catch up on sleep on Fridays and the weekend, as long as there's not like a wedding or something. But it's the second piece. By the way, I'm pretty good at operating, without sleep, but it's certainly something where I can be a little bit more cranky. If I've had like consecutive nights of pretty late nights of work. I'd say the second habit, I always need to do this of the night before, the next day, I always review kind of my calendar, figure out what's really important, figure out what I want to get accomplished that day. If I just wake up and I have to go immediately into a call with like one of our European customers and I'm like foggy and, you're just in back-to-backs over and over again, by like 4 p.m., you're just like, I have no idea what I actually did. I was just a zombie working through. So trying to be very deliberate by reviewing that. Same thing with like going into a new week, right? On a Sunday night, just making sure I know exactly, what the goal for that week is. And we're trying to set better, similar cadence with all of the leadership team on our team as well.
Yeah. Well, by reviewing the night before, your subconscious mind works on it.
No, yeah.
They say that it helps in terms of like thinking through the problem and getting to a solution before you start your day.
Totally. Or like, if I know I'm walking into an important meeting, I have to do some mental prep of like, what are the 3 things that I really want to get accomplished out of this meeting? If I just walk into it without having even like 2 minutes to think about it, you're just lost.
You're cold.
Yeah.
So is there a quote or a mantra that inspires you?
Yeah, there is a lot of moments from my days at Salesforce that I was so lucky to work with some phenomenally talented folks. And each kind of manager or boss that I've had have imparted some wisdom. So I remember my first manager was Mackenzie. I was probably a pain in the butt to deal with this angsty kid who wanted to accomplish a lot and do cool things. But she always said, John, like, I think she got frustrated at just all the different projects I wanted to work on. She goes, it's a Venn diagram. There's a Venn diagram of what the company and the team needs. And then there's a Venn diagram of like, or the circle of what you think is cool. You have to play in that little overlap or what the company needs and suck it up, And I try to bring that type of mentality to our team as well. Because we, like our chief of staff, Fahim, for example, is incredibly ambitious and incredibly talented. And so I always say, 2 things for me, 1 thing for you. But all 3 needs to be something that helps the company move forward. I had another manager, Nick, who I think about this every day of, motivation is incredibly powerful, but it comes and goes, and discipline is what gets you through the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, even if you don't want to do something, just like, being disciplined about doing it setting that like muscle memory is something that is incredibly important.
Yeah.
And then finally, sorry, I know you asked for 1 quote, but I'll do the whole chronology. My old boss at Salesforce also was Denise Dresser, who is now like the CEO of Slack. Have done amazing things since then. And, she said she really preaches radical candor. And so I've seen her just be incredibly like straightforward and honest with her direct reports around, hey, this is what, good looks like, and asking very tough questions of why this has been done or not been done. And it's never emotional. It's very like facts-based objective. And so I try to bring some of that into manage the team as well.
That's good, especially in the startup world, right? We have to quickly get to the solution to the problem.
Yeah.
Not dilly-dally in it. And you talked about like powering through the problem, like just power through. I think you talked about motivation, but that also helps with motivation, right? Because when you power through an issue, like even when you don't want to go do it, you get to the outcome, and that kind of propels or helps motivate you to continue to do those things.
Oh yeah, it's just a muscle memory, and I always say like we have to get more at bats. And once you solve like one very tough problem, the next problem doesn't seem as hard, or it doesn't seem as daunting if the challenge is higher. So
very cool. Yeah. So I have a favorite question.
Okay.
I ask this of almost all my guests. It's a favorite of mine. And you're hosting a dinner party, Jon.
Okay.
You can host this dinner party anywhere in the world. We could talk about locations. It'd be very interesting to hear your point of view on that. And you can invite any 3 guests from the present or the past to this amazing dinner party. Whom would you invite and why?
There's so many. When I was young, and I would answer this, or I guess I'm still young, but in my teenage years, in my teenage years, I'd always joke like Kim Jong-un because it's such a interesting character around.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
character.
exactly. Yeah, in some ways, but in reality, I'd say number one would be my my grandfather on my mom's side, who passed away. My grandfather, many years ago, and I growing up in the U.S., I didn't get a chance to spend too much time with him, but I later learned after he passed of some of the crazy stories that he's dealt with. So, when Japan like colonized Korea, for example, he was in Japan, he got shipped to Japan for a little bit, and then actually had to go to a concentration camp up in Serbia, or no, not Serbia. What's the tundra, the frozen tundra? I don't know the country in.
Russia, where they send you to.
Siberia, yeah.
Siberia.
And he actually walked back from Siberia barefoot back to Korea. It took him like many, many months, and just showed up in my grandmother's doorsteps, like thin as a stick with long hair. I would love to just learn about what type of will it took and how that shaped him as a person for any like hardship down the road. I want to write like an autobiography about, or not a biography about that.
Very cool.
I think one of my favorite people is Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
I think he has such a wide range of not expertise, but just topics that he can engage in, incredibly intellectually curious. And I think I'd be able to like ask so many questions, or
he's so witty. I want to be Jon Stewart when
he's a funny guy.
I grow up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then final one is kind of a funky one, but Jim Carrey.
Oh yeah.
I saw an interview where he talked about how there's this face that you put on for everyone, and there's who you are internally. And when you're an actor, or like people kind of pigeonhole you into a specific image, there's such a hard pressure to live up to that image or be that person when they meet him in person. And not saying I'm like two-faced where there's like me, personal Jon, and then there's like professional Jon, but that's definitely converged more and more as work has become more of my life. And so, one of the things I want to talk to him about is just how do you maintain kind of your self-identity and who you are, even if it clashes with what you need to be in a professional setting, or not, but as a CEO of a company. And so I think those are pretty interesting topics.
Yeah, because we do have to have a persona in the business world that might be different than our kind of personal stuff, right?
Well, everyone has it. Everyone has like the phone voice. Yeah,
or the podcast voice.
Yeah.
Go there.
It's very nice, by the way. Yeah, I told you that always.
Where are we hosting this dinner?
Ooh, I mean, anyone that's gone out with me knows I'm a big Korean barbecue guy.
Okay.
So we're gonna be in Seoul at one of my favorite Korean barbecue spots. It's a little dingy hole in a wall, and we're just gonna grill some pork belly and beef, and have some soju, and just talk about life.
All right, I'm kind of come join you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be a lot of fun. Meet your granddad. And, Jim Carrey and Jon Stewart are two amazing individuals. Well, so it's really cool. So, we are living through an amazing time of change and transformation, and we are in 2025, and really at the early first quarter of the year. What would you say to our viewers and listeners to help them optimize for their success this new year? How do they need to lean in?
Specific to marketplace, or just in general?
Just in general.
I'd say just being intellectually curious and like tinkering around. So we're going through such a rapid evolution in technology, and a lot of the adoption in like your day-to-day work setting, for example, because enterprise adoption generally is much, much slower than consumer adoption. And so tinker around with all these different tools that are out and figure out like what the art of the possible is, and just being very curious about that mentality, I think is super important for you to understand what the value of this technology and how it can change the world. Like me, myself, like play around all the time with like ChatGPT, Claude, like, Perplexity to figure out like, where does the system break? How can it actually enhance my productivity? I mean, just the other day, this is such a stupid use case, but I wanted to like recreate a slide. And, I didn't want to go ask someone on our team to do it. So, and I haven't written Python in like years, but like just asking ChatGPT exactly how I do it, was able to do it in 20 minutes. And now any other kind of work that, I want to be able to do that with, I can leverage this like little snippet of code that, GPT gave me, or like creating images, for example, for LinkedIn. There's so many different applications, and you have to tinker around with it to understand what's possible and what's not.
So I recently downloaded Claude and Perplexity. I'm kind of curious because I've been using ChatGPT. Which is your favorite?
ChatGPT.
Yeah, very cool.
I think partly because I just use it for most.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all pretty good. You can't go wrong.
Jon, so excited to have you here today. Thank you for making the trip from San Francisco all the way here to Boca Raton, Florida. And so glad you get to spend time with our viewers and listeners. I want to thank you for your support and partnership. Thank you for joining the Ultimate Guide to Partnering.
No, thanks for having me. It was such a blast. I always, as I mentioned, learn something new at all these events, and it helps that Boca Raton is phenomenal, and the venue and everything was phenomenal. So really appreciate your partnership.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jon, and thank you to our audience. At Ultimate Partner, we strive to bring you great leaders like Jon to help you achieve more. If you like our podcast and like watching us on YouTube, please tell your friends about us and hit the subscribe button on either Spotify, Apple, or our YouTube channel. You can also follow along on theultimatepartner.com to learn more about our events, our podcasts, and our community. Together, let's spark the ecosystem.